Well, good morning, everyone. Just a quick check that everyone is hearing me loud and clear, so any adjustments can be made. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. So, welcome to the Equality Guernsey Conference. It is wonderful to see you all here. When we originally pitched to the Committee for Employment and Social Security with our ideas for this series, we were proposing a 100-person conference as the culmination, and it's so rewarding to see that we had double that signed up, and most people have turned up by the looks of it as well, which is great. Just a couple of housekeeping regs before we move on. There aren't any fire drills due today. The fire exits are behind you and to either side at the front of you. And wherever you are during the day, even if you're in the main building for a workshop and there are any fire alarms, we ask that you gather on the car park to the side of the Performing Arts Centre, wherever you are, whether it's main building or here. Coffee, tea breaks will be where we gathered to begin with. The lunch is in the main hall in the other building, but we will have breakout to outside. And within your pack, you've got a map which should help you to get to your workshops. Any problems, there are people around and about to help you. And our Equality Street, a range of stalls from partner organisations is being set up in the hall in the main building just over the way. For those of you who don't know, the Equality Working Group was formed around 3 years ago. And that was to promote and accelerate the equality agenda within Guernsey. In particular, the need for equality legislation, and to work with government to establish an equality and rights organisation to promote, protect and monitor. We're made up of volunteers, predominantly representing a range of third sector organisations, many who are involved today in various ways or have been throughout the series. And you can find out more on equality.gg if you'd like to. At the beginning of the year, we were successful with the bid to the Committee for Employment and Social Security to, as we put it, #start the conversation. It's a series of events raising awareness regarding human rights, equality, inclusion and diversity within the Guernsey community, culminating in today's conference. And we would like you to get involved in the Twitter feed throughout the day. If you're needing to log on, it's GCFE, and the password today is together. So please do get involved through social media as well. Resources and information were also gathered onto the equality.g website and backed up with a social media presence. The 6 months have certainly seemed to pass in a flash. The project has truly been a partnership between government in the form of the Committee for Employment and Social Security on one of the identified government priorities, with the private sector. At this point, I'd like to thank Northern Trust for their sponsorship, for their main sponsorship of the event today. Public sector organisations such as the College of FE, who are hosting this conference today and have had hosted events through the series. And a wide range of third sector partners have also been involved. In fact, the series wouldn't have been so extensive or even possible without the organisations identified on the slide there, and many others who have supported us in a quieter way behind the scenes. And it's been great to see the success of the series so far. I'm really pleased and impressed with the quality and the experience of our speakers, our panellists, our workshop hosts on such a variety of important and related topics. I'm sure that you will all have a thoughtful and a thought-provoking and informative day. And the timing of the conference couldn't be better, with legislation consultation details soon to be announced. And I would encourage you all to get involved in that consultation. I will have the opportunity to round up with thanks at the end, but while you're all here, I would particularly like to thank Kirsten Neeson and Karen Blanchford, who are the driving force behind this series. Their commitment, their dedication, professional approach has been absolutely outstanding over the last 6-7 months. I would now like to introduce you to Deputy Emilie Yerby to set the scene. She, along with the committee president, who I see just there, Deputy Michelle Leclerc, have given the political leadership in advancing proposals to ensure legislation and an equality and rights organisation are debated this political term, and that they remain a high priority for government. I admire their dedication, their perseverance and diligence, and wish them well in forthcoming States debates. I hope you all have an enjoyable day, and I'm now, with great pleasure, pass over to Deputy Yerby. Emilie.
Okay. Hi everyone. Can I just ask if you could take a moment to check with your neighbour if they can hear me and if they need to see my lips, that they can see my lips. Can you just do that and give me a wave if there are any problems? Okay, looks like everyone's fine. If I start speaking too quickly or inaudibly, again, please just give me a wave. Keep waving till you've got my attention and I will try and do better. I'm trying to work off my screen, so again, forgive me if there are any tech failures. It's absolutely wonderful to see so many of you here today for today's conference on equality and human rights. I'm here today as a member of the Committee for Employment and Social Security, which, as Alan said, is the States Committee that is leading the work on developing equality and non-discrimination law in Guernsey. And I'm going to briefly put that work in context now and explain what some of it might mean for us. But I wanted to start with a word of thanks of my own, because Equality Guernsey, as Alan explained, came up with the concept of this conference, and the whole equality series of workshops and training seminars that have led up to it, in response to a call for ideas from the committee. And they have done an absolutely phenomenal job in taking it from strength to strength, in engaging with such a wide group of interested parties, and finally in delivering the incredible programme that we have ahead of us today. So thank you very much, Equality Guernsey. Now, we know that discrimination is a worldwide issue. All around the world, people are treated unfairly on the basis of their disability, their age, their sexuality, their sex, and a multitude of other personal characteristics that you have little choice or control over. Now, in some parts of the world, discrimination is matched with violence and hatred, and we are very lucky that that's not so much of a problem here in Guernsey. But where discrimination hurts us here is what it does to quality of life, what it does to economic productivity, and what it does to equality of opportunity. Did you know that disabled people are disadvantaged at every turn when it comes to getting a job? Whether that's recruitment or selection, or access to training, or promotion opportunities. And some of that stems directly from poorly thought out assumptions about what disabled people can and can't do, which overlook the realities of the person who is right in front of you. But a lot of it is less deliberate and more accidental. Things like holding job interviews in inaccessible venues, or failing to make job application documents available in accessible formats. Actions which aren't intended to screen disabled people out of the application process, but inevitably do. And that's not just unfair. It's not just morally wrong. It also hurts us economically. We have a small workforce here in Guernsey and almost full employment. But while disabled people are unemployed or underemployed, held back from achieving their full potential in work because of thoughtless barriers, we are losing the productivity and growth that we would gain from their full inclusion. And the same is true, for example, of women, not a minority, but a group of people who have been historically disadvantaged relative to men for almost all of history. Now, as women, we have only been recognised as citizens who have the right to choose who governs us and the right to participate in that government for the last 100 years. Men have had it for thousands. As women, we are still opting out of the workforce in high numbers and being paid less than our male colleagues when we stay. A recent local report by PwC estimated that closing the employment gap here, just here, between men and women in Guernsey, could boost our economy by £168 million. £168 million. Don't you think that's worth the effort? Now, Guernsey's political commitment to equality, in a manner of speaking, goes way back. We decided that we wanted the UN Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, a convention you might have heard of as CEDAW, because it's much easier to say the acronym than the full name. We decided we wanted that extended back in the 1980s in response to some of the challenges that I just outlined, which are still here with us, but we knew about them 30 or 40 years ago. So our trouble is consistency. Although we made that decision in the 80s, there were a few targets we had to meet to get there. And we kept putting off the work that we needed to do. So we still haven't made it. If I were to give you a potted history of how the States of Guernsey has dealt with matters of equality and non-discrimination, and I'm not going to bore you this morning with a long timeline of dates and promises, but if I were to recount that history, it would all be very much the same. You would see small bursts of activity and commitment from time to time, and then long fallow periods where we lose the initiative and fail to follow through. So, for example, around the turn of the millennium, Guernsey introduced its own human rights law. And as far back as 2003, the States of Guernsey decided that our island should have a single non-discrimination law, protecting people from unfair treatment on the basis of a whole range of grounds. We even got as far as introducing what's called an enabling law. That's effectively a legal hook that you can hang any future legislation off. But after that, we only got as far as introducing limited protections against discrimination in work on the basis of sex, gender reassignment, and marriage status. So in the 15 years since that enabling law was introduced and that promise was made, we have yet to fulfill the promise we made to the island. But in the past 10 years, something has changed. It's not in the States, or rather, if we have changed, it has been in response to what our community is asking of us. No, what's really changed the game in respect of equality and non-discrimination in Guernsey is the emergence of a sustained community-led call for action, which first took form in the shape of the Guernsey Disability Alliance. For the past 10 years, the GDA has brought together disabled people's organisations and individual disabled islanders. It has lobbied government for greater recognition of disabled people, for better services and support, including for caregivers, and for protection from discrimination for disabled people who just want to work, to enjoy a social life, to be part of the island community like anyone else. They've lobbied, they've protested, they've carried great loads of work by themselves, and they've persisted. They have kept it on the agenda and kept it on the agenda until they have seen progress. So if women have only had the vote for the last 100 years, some disabled people have only had it for 4. Perhaps even some of you here, or some in your family, people with learning disabilities or mental health conditions, voted legally for the very first time in the last election. Because disabled people's organisations fought for it, and the states made the decision to change it. Because the GDA and the states worked together to make the election accessible and to provide information and support to disabled people who'd be voting for the first time. That is how a fundamental right was won for disabled citizens here in Guernsey. It isn't just that the GDA, and more recently other groups like Liberate and the umbrella of Equality Guernsey, have kept the cause of equal rights and non-discrimination on the state's agenda. More importantly, they have been willing to work together with states' committees to help achieve progress that is right for Guernsey. Progress that is rooted in the realities of islanders' lives and that addresses the realities of the barriers and disadvantages that they face. So soon after this conference, the Committee for Employment and Social Security will publish our proposals for non-discrimination law in Guernsey. These proposals have been informed by the people they are designed to benefit. That includes people who experience discrimination on the basis of disability or age or race, because they're carers, because of their sexuality or their marital status, because of their religion. But it also includes employers and service providers whose business practices will need to reflect the law. And I want to assure you in saying that in developing the law, we have heard so many examples of good practice too. There is already a lot of good work to build on and lots to look forward to. And I just want to say, ahead of those proposals being published, that while a great deal of credit goes to everyone who has helped to shape them, of course, if they fall short in any respect, the blame for that rests squarely with us. And we are the ones who want to hear your input, to want to hear your critique and your suggestions for the ways that we can make this better and make it right for the island as a whole. In 2013, the states passed the Disability and Inclusion Strategy, which included a commitment to non-discrimination law for disabled people and carers. And then in 2018, we decided to revisit our decision of 2003, the one that said Guernsey should have a single non-discrimination law for everyone who faces disadvantage. And we decided to roll those two pieces of work into one. We did this because the extra work required to do so was marginal. In other words, providing protection for everyone wouldn't slow us down in fulfilling our promise to disabled islanders and carers. And because it would be easier and better for our community to understand and to adapt to the changes all at once than to have a slow drip of non-discrimination laws over a period of many years, once every 15 years, in fact, if current progress continued at its present rate. Finally getting this law in place is going to be a significant change for Guernsey. It's going to be an important step forward. But the real change, the change that matters most of all, is what's happening here in the community. Now, I can map that change out in my own life. Coming out, to myself as much as to anyone else at university, I thought that I'd never be able to be comfortable living as an openly bi woman here in Guernsey. That wasn't the context I had left the island in. And I know too that I would never have found the courage to stand for the states if same-sex marriage hadn't been legalised the year before. That moment changed the message from "you're tolerated in our society" to "you're welcome" at the heart of it. And it was finally like coming home. And then there was this wonderful Pride last year, which I could never have imagined, where the community really did open its hearts to us. Now, for those of us who've experienced discrimination on other grounds, whether that's sex or age or disability or anything else, it is more difficult to pinpoint a single symbolic moment when things began to change, and even this is only a beginning. But things are changing, bit by bit. Take, for example, the employers who've signed up to the Employers' Disability Charter. Maybe there'll be a few more of you by the time today is done. All of those organisations have committed to evening the odds, at least a bit, for disabled people accessing meaningful employment. Or take the gradual increase in women being represented in senior positions on boards around the island, although it's still nothing like in proportion to our numbers in the population. Or all of you who've taken part in the Equality series and come here today, long before a law is snapping at your toes, because you recognise the importance of an inclusive workplace and a broad customer base. These changes may be small and slow, too slow too often, but they are the most important of all, because they're here where people live their lives. They are changes in practice, not just in words. Changes in our workplaces, our shops, our schools, in the places where our day-to-day lives happen. Those kind of changes are the most lasting and real and meaningful of all. And as you'll learn throughout today, my committee is determined to support and encourage these practical changes through an equality and rights organisation. I'm not going to go into that in depth now because I'm sure you're desperate to hear June and because it will give me nothing to say at the end if I do. But as you take part in today's sessions, perhaps you'd like to think about what the states could do in this context to help you be as inclusive and accessible as possible. A non-discrimination law won't be the solution to every challenge that we will talk about today, but it is a commitment. It is a recognition that everyone in our community should be included, that everyone should have an equal opportunity to participate in the life of our island. Throughout the course of today, a wonderful cast of speakers, professionals and activists will unfold what that means in practice. I hope and I'm sure that you will find it useful and inspiring. But first of all, it is my absolute privilege to introduce June Sarpong, MBE. June was here in Guernsey for the Literary Festival last year when we first met and when she spoke about her fantastic book, Diversify, which I recommend to everybody here if you've not already read it. June's book is a call to arms, and it puts the spotlight, as its description says, on people who are marginalised. It explores ways to overcome prejudice and to create inclusion in communities like ours. June, we are absolutely delighted to have you back, and we can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thank you and welcome.